Hopefully, you will
Okay,
keep it short and sweet for 8 minutes maximum, sir.
Yeah, just 8 minutes, and then of course I have to leave because I have a lecture, at Jawadharpur University.
Not a problem, sir.
Around say 5 o'clock. So I have to leave the webinar at about 5 o'clock.
Okay, we are going live. All the best.
I see my good friend Gayani there.
Chamber of Commerce Sri Lanka, or ACCSL, together with AAT Sri Lanka, also the Sri Lanka Institute of Directors, known as SLID, Women in Management, WIM, the MBA Alumni Association of the University of Colombo, the Employers Federation of Ceylon, Daily FT, and PIBT, that's Pioneer Institute of Business Technology, all of them present this webinar today under the title Crisis or Opportunity, Sri Lanka's Past During this Middle East War. This happens to be the 47th such webinar that is hosted in quite the same way. And this one, like all the previous ones, focuses on measures that are vital for the growth of the economy of Sri Lanka. Now, the webinar sponsor is ACCA, and we're grateful for that support. This program is broadcast live via Facebook platforms on ICCSL website, Facebook site, WIM, the MBA Alumni Association, ACCA, and also Daily FT. Plus, there's also YouTube. In this case, the YouTube channel of LNW, Lanka News Web. They are hosting this as I need to rephrase that. Their YouTube channel will be hosting and presenting this broadcast. So we just thought we would let you know that on multiple platforms, this is available and will remain available, even if some people are unable to enjoy this program today for any reason at all. And we also have some international involvement and engagement by people from overseas. And if they are not able to view it at the same time that we're presenting it, well, interestingly, this will remain on those Facebook sites for a while after. So people can pick it up and enjoy viewing the program for themselves at a later time. Okay, now the topic. Well, this topic dominates, there's no question about it. And the reality that looms large and rather uncomfortably before South Asia and indeed Lankan communities is very real. And just 24 hours ago, or even less, just a short while ago, this is what was aired on Al Jazeera in their program, Counting the Cost. And we have a short extract which we would like to play now.
Hey there, I'm Scott McLean. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your look at the world of business and economics. What's being called the world's biggest ever energy crisis. The Iran war is tightening supply and may crush demand pretty soon. But how much oil has actually been taken off the market? Is the crude lost, or supply chains maybe just being redirected? The Iran war has sent energy prices higher. So far, the price of oil has hovered around $100 a barrel. How high could it go if the conflict drags on and the Strait of Hormuz remains disrupted? And what does this mean for people like you and I? Top international organizations are warning that no nation will be spared the fallout from the Iran conflict. So is the global economy sleepwalking into a recession?
Right, there we are. So that was just one aspect, the energy crisis. But are there other factors? Well, there might be. Now, Sri Lanka's economy has already been delivered a serious challenge in the aftermath of the Ditwa cyclone. Then the events that followed February the 28th this year was not only a horrific shock, but also placed this recovery process of Sri Lanka in a tailspin. And then Sri Lanka has been described as one of the vulnerable countries, vulnerable. There we are. So the exposure that the country has faced, showing up some professionals in the banking sector as being unworthy and manipulative, does not augur well in the international space, to which is added the more recent crisis, which is, I understand, under investigation, where a large sum of dollars has disappeared from the treasury. So these tensions could well add to the cause for caution that could stand in the way of FDIs coming over to Sri Lanka. And then far away, the unpredictable nature of the protagonists in the war in the Middle East, which at times is taking on the hideous form of a religious and cultural war, shows the egregious nature of politics at play. Now, this discussion today is not about politics or geopolitics, because those matters are in a state of flux and beyond our control. The question is, what can Sri Lanka do? And what readjustment in strategy and planning is required? And outside of ideology, what practical steps are sorely needed to be taken to keep the island economy viable? So those are the areas that will be of the greatest interest to all of those. And we welcome all of the viewers who are joining us from different parts of Sri Lanka and maybe overseas as well. Several eminent professionals, analysts, and commentators who are conversant with this vital subject will be heard on this program. And we have keynotes which will be sounded. We start with Mr. Murtaza Jafferji, Chairman, Advocata Institute and CEO of JB Securities Limited. So now we invite your attention as Murtaza speaks. Over to you, Mr. Jafferji.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the organizers to invite me. I've been allotted 8 minutes, so I'll try to get across what I have to say in this period of time. Until this crisis came about towards the end of February, Sri Lanka was in a good place. All high-frequency indicators in the months of January and February were pointing towards a strong economic growth outcome for 2026. I'm afraid this crisis is like a perfect storm for Sri Lanka because it has impacted many economic drivers. And unfortunately, there is a sense of complacency because the government has not permitted full price transmission of many of the energy price increases to the economy. Perhaps some of it will happen on the 1st of May, and then the general population will get a sense of the depth of this crisis. I have prepared a few slides which I would like to use now to get my message across. So, okay, right. As you can see, the battle damage has reduced since there was a ceasefire, except in Lebanon, where they're still exchanging fire. Most of the other countries, the sporadicity has come in, but still the crisis in the Straits of Hormuz continues. Now, what the columns on the left show is the volume of ships that were passing through the straits, which was around about 60 ships a day. Now that has come down to a trickle. With the US blockade, even the Iranian vessels are not allowed to come through. So it is not only oil and gas, but it is also cargo ships, both coming in and out. And aviation, the Gulf airports are major centers for aviation. As you can see, Kuwait, hardly any activity. But even Dubai and Qatar, which are major hubs, aviation hubs, the activity has come down significantly. And this kind of shows you how global stock markets have reacted. Now, the very energy dependent economies on Gulf oil have reacted at a larger extent than some of the economies that are oil exporters like Malaysia. And this shows you the problem with oil prices. Now, this is a very distortionary graph because we are plotting here Brent prices. And Brent prices are 1 month forward prices. They are not spot prices. So you have in curves, future curves, something called contango, which means that curves are always upwardly sloping most of the time because future prices are slightly higher than current prices because it's based on the assumption that you buy now and you store, and the storage cost comes into the contango effect. At the moment, the curve is in significant backwardation, which means that the spot prices are significantly higher than the future prices because there's an expectation in the market that the conflict will end. So to give you a context, this, I don't know what yesterday's price was, but when this was updated, it was about $105 Brent. CPC is buying crude oil at 150, right? So there's a big difference between spot because a physical market, when refineries need it, is significantly higher than what Brent prices are indicating. As I said, that the reality of the situation has still not struck home. And when you look at petroleum refining, there are a number of products that come out. Right? They all have different prices. You can see that diesel is a heavier fuel, petrol is a lighter fuel, and LPG gas is at a different level. Now, this shows you what the prices of distillates are. Diesel and kerosene have some of the highest prices, petrol is significantly lower, right? So historically in Sri Lanka, we are used to seeing diesel prices lower than petrol prices because the taxation has been different and it has been misconstrued that diesel is the poor man's fuel, which is not true anymore. Now, the problem with Sri Lanka is when prices lie, crises follow. So the question is, do you have fuel shortages or high prices? And this is one of my analysts doing the computation. The diesel price should be 650 rupees, right? Roughly 650 rupees. You can see that the super diesel price, this was of course based on a spot price on a particular date. It will be an average price. The super diesel price, because the refinery price of super diesel and normal diesel, there's hardly any difference. And it's a taxation that differs it. Now, there is no subsidy or any price controls on super diesel. Most of the independent retailers like Sinopec, etc., are pricing at over 600, which is about what the price of diesel should be. And recently, Sri Lanka paid $280 a barrel for diesel. Based on that, the retail price should be 750 rupees. Right? So the government has said that they're going to subsidize 100 rupees on diesel and 20 rupees on petrol. So expect that at the end of this month, on 1st May, diesel price is going to be 500 rupees because there'll be 100 rupees subsidy. So this is going to be a shock, basically. And you cannot blame the government because already they're subsidizing 100. And we do about 160 million liters of petrol and diesel a month, right? So the subsidy is about for diesel alone 16 billion, which is a huge amount. The total ASVASU must spend for a month is only 12 billion. So it represents about 16% of total imports fuel. And this gives you the breakup for the last few years. And as I said, things were flying until this crisis. And you can see the demand for both petrol and diesel indicative of economic momentum. They were significantly higher, right? So high prices are needed to dampen demand, and you have to have significant demand destruction happening, which indicates that economic momentum is going to come down. This shows you like how much we are spending a month on fuel imports, but 300 to 400. Some months it's higher, etc., because there are inventory effects. Now, the World Bank has done an analysis on household income and expenditure survey, which shows that 70% of any subsidy goes to the top 30% of households because they are the ones who have the income and therefore the expenditure. And therefore, when you subsidize, you're mistargeting. So then you have the case of electricity. Do you want higher prices or power cuts? The recent price increase is significantly below than what it needs to be because, again, we have a backward-looking thing. It will get adjusted next year, right? So if the bulk supply account has a big loss, the adjustment will happen next year for the same period of time. And this shows you electricity consumption. So on a typical day, we consume about 60,000 megawatts these days because it's hot and industrial production has started, or not today, but on a weekday. It used to be about 52,000 megawatts in January. So in the month of March, which is a peak production month, it had gone to 60,000. And this shows you compared to the previous years. So all indication that the economic activity momentum was very high. Now, if you don't allow price transmission to happen, the losses are going to become even more larger and larger, which was the very reasons why all these crises have happened over the years. And we are in the dry season. So we are lucky that there's an enormous amount of solar energy that is sitting on rooftops, which was expanded significantly in 2024. And because we are in the dry season and we don't have cloudy days, there is excess amount of solar generation. So for example, most of the commercial plants today have been shut down. They're called curtailment because there is excess amount of solar energy. But the hydro is also getting run down, and the thermal plants, which are mainly at the moment on coal, are running. But as you know, there's a coal problem. So once they try to start operating, basically, say, the furnace oil and the naphtha, that's why they needed crude. Luckily, we got some crude shipments. If you use diesel, the unit price of generation will be over 200 rupees. right? Average cost has been 30 to 35 rupees. But if you have to switch on the diesel plants, because you don't have naphtha or you don't have furnace oil, because you can operate on diesel also, or you have certain diesel plants that are backup, the cost is going to be astronomically high. So now we can't wait till next year to correct losses this year. I think there is a fuel surge that the IMF has been discussing with the government that's going to come through. But still, for industry and hotel, the price of electricity is 40% cheaper than what it is in Tamil Nadu, because you have different tariffs for different people. The currency has been recently depreciating. Until February, we were running a current account surplus. The March accounts will come in a few days. The central bank has continued to accumulate reserves, but perhaps not so in March, because the statistics are not out yet. And the reserves had built up, but if they are unable to start accumulating reserves, the build-up will slow. The liquidity has come down. One is that central bank may be selling dollars. Second is that there's a huge jump in cash in circulation due to the Aurudu. So the liquidity does go down, which will start impacting interest rates, and interest rates have started going up. The foreigners, fearing a big depreciation, have been selling treasury bills and bonds. And the fuel imports, you can see that even in the month of January, fuel imports had jumped up. In terms of tourism, we can see the effect. Look at the red one. That's the effect in March. There has been a significant reduction. Look at the difference between January and February. January and February record levels, both in terms of arrivals, but March is down. And this shows you what's happening in April, the data that I have up to the point. And you can see that there has been a significant contraction. Now, May and June are the lowest months. So you are really into the off-peak season in May and June. So the loss is going to be a lot lower. You have to be a bit careful with these tourism statistics, because they were overestimating the spend earlier. They did a survey of 10,000 people, and now they have set the spend at about $150. It used to be at about $175. So that drop you see is more due to a mistake the previous times than a real drop. The current figure is more realistic. 35% of our tourists come through Middle Eastern carriers. The tourists who come at this time of the year are not Western Europeans. So that impact is a bit muted. The industry is hoping that Indians, etc., will probably come, because it's going to be a lot more expensive for them to go to other places in the world, and they may decide to come to Sri Lanka. So that's one of the opportunities Arun talked about. These are the hubs that most of our tourists used to come. But as I said, these are mainly the Western Europeans, which really matter to us because they stay longer in Sri Lanka. And they come in the peak season where the yields are much higher. Remittances were extremely strong. Even in March, they were at record levels. It remains to be seen what happens in April, because what I'm hearing is some of the employees basically are only getting 3 days of work. And we have a large number of Sri Lankans working in the tourism industry, and the tourism industry has completely collapsed, especially in Dubai, etc. This kind of shows you 70% of remittances come from the Middle East. 80% of people were working in the Middle East. 20% of the departures out of our airport are for foreign employment. And this kind of gives you a speck of where the people are, about 1 million people. I mean, I haven't been able to get a definitive figure, because nobody seems to be having a survey of this, but roughly it's about 1 million plus or minus. And there's a lot of females also, but predominantly now, most of the people leaving for foreign employment are male. Right, this is not needed. And tea exports. So I actually come from a company whose main business is tea exports. The tea prices have not come down in the auction, strangely. But what my brother says is, who's overlooking the division, is they are using very circuitous routes now to ship the tea. So some of it have to go all around Africa, basically through the Mediterranean, and then it comes to Turkey, and then it gets put across to Iraq or Iran. So the lead times have gone up. And because of that, there's a lot of inventory building going up, and the tea prices have not reflected the crisis. And then, of course, the big thing is fertilizer, because fertilizer requires ammonia, and ammonia production comes out of natural gas. You use hydrogen out of natural gas, because when you extract natural gas, you have hydrogen also coming, and that is mixed up with nitrogen to produce ammonia. From ammonia, you produce urea. The prices have gone up significantly. Our harvesting season is over. The Yalla season will be coming up in next 1 or 2 months. And there's a significant increase in fertilizer prices. And this part of the world is significantly reliant on Middle East fertilizer. They represent about 30% of urea production globally. So that's what I said, that Sri Lanka is facing a perfect storm. There's not much we can do, but one mistake we should not do, which is the kind of mistake we have done over and over again, which is to suppress market signals. And politically, people think that you can't, you have to subsidize, because I've had to battle all sorts of crazy coots who still argue about socialistic policies. The reality is, as the World Bank showed, if you subsidize 70% of the benefit go to the top 30% of households like me. Now that we have Aswasuma, it's better to just give the poor people the cash so that they have the basic sustenance and don't subsidize people like me. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you very much, Murtaza. We appreciate very much the range and scope that you covered in that presentation. We are able to realize from those statistics that it can be quite alarming. But we'll leave that commentary for later. Now, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and certainly no stranger to these webinars that have been conducted by ICCSF, Dr. W.A. Wijewardena. So over to you, Vijay. We'd like to hear from you.
Unmute, Mr. Wijewardena.
Okay, thank you very much. And of course, Arun and Murtaza had just, taken us through the gravity of the crisis that we are facing today. And the topic that had been given to me is whether we can use it as an opportunity or whether we should continue to lament over the crisis. So this particular episode where the Sri Lanka had been hit very badly, as Murtaza had very correctly mentioned, and also Central Bank in its annual economic review of 2025, just it has flagged that, but it has not given in the details which Murtaza has presented to us. Central Bank has just in one sentence had said that the uncertainty surrounding the Middle East crisis, together with the climate changes and also other type of shocks that Sri Lanka is facing, Sri Lanka's future is not to be expected to have a very, very promising future. For example, we had this 5% economic growth in 2025, but the central bank had warned us that this particular 5% will not be repeated in 2026 and beyond. So when it comes to using a crisis as an opportunity, it has a long history. And if you go back to the 2nd century CE, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius is the one who had said that now every problem has an opportunity also. Followed by John F. Kennedy, who had again in 1959 preached that there's a danger as well as an opportunity in a crisis. But of course, the one important thing that we have to consider is that the former governor of the central bank, Mr. S. Javadana, when central bank was hit by this LTT bomb in 1996, he used the metaphor of the phoenix rising from the ashes, and that was used by him to boost the dimmed morale of the central bank employees, which he continued to do until central bank was completely rehabilitated rehabilitated from the damage that had been done by the LTT. Now, what we have to look at is that not every crisis will offer opportunities. If the crisis is a one-time crisis and its path can be very correctly identified, and the end result can be non-predicted by us, then of course we can use it as an opportunity for the country. For example, now Ditwa cyclone which hit Sri Lanka, we had the opportunity of, it's a one-time crisis, and we had the opportunity of tracking the path as well as the end result. But the present Middle East war, as Arun had very correctly presented with this little clip from Al Jazeera, nobody can say what would happen tomorrow because it's so uncertain, so unpredictable. All the players in the Middle East war are changing their role every minute. Now, of course, some of the Iranian delegation is reported that had reached Islamabad for negotiation, but of course they had announced that they will not meet any of the American members. So what it means is there's a great degree of uncertainty, and the things are changing every year. So therefore, for Sri Lanka to use this as an opportunity for future economic growth is very remote. So in my view, we should not just try to look at it as an opportunity to set up either a naval hub or an aviation hub in Sri Lanka to replace Dubai or any other country. What we have to do is, as Murtaza had very correctly presented, the internal economic policies will have to be modified in order to meet this particular situation. As it is, as the central bank had also created a very gloomy picture, what we have to consider is a gloomy picture. Even though Sri Lanka has having this high foreign reserves, all the amounts of the foreign reserves in the central bank statistics cannot be used for this purpose, because it contains 1.4 billion US dollars, which is the proceeds of the soft facility which Sri Lanka had got with People's Bank of China, not in dollars but in yuan, which cannot be used by Sri Lanka right now, because if it is to be used by Sri Lanka, there are two conditions. Condition number one is that Sri Lanka's foreign reserves will have to go up to a level of 3 months of future imports, which we have so far not reached. Second one is that it is only available in yuan and not in dollars. So as a result, even if it is available, we can use it only to pay for imports from China. Even then, that we cannot do, because all the Chinese imports are also priced in US dollars. So we are when we reduce this, deduct this 1.4 billion, the actual usable foreign resources is only 5.6 billion. So which is not sufficient for Sri Lanka to meet the future risk. So what I suggest is that instead of trying to use this as an opportunity to build up new naval, new aviation hubs in Sri Lanka, which is a remote possibility because of the uncertainty of the crisis that we are facing, what we have to do is we have to do internal policies where the government will have to tell the truth to the people. Government should not just try to use these palliatives to please the people. Instead, government will have to tell the truth, because as Murtaza has very correctly said, the oil prices will have to go up, diesel prices will have to go up, and government cannot continue to subsidize at the present rate. So we have to tell the people, and we have to tighten our belts, and that is the opportunity that is available to us. And I conclude my presentation because I have been asked to do it in 8 minutes time, because the Sri Lanka has no any prospect of diverting the current naval hubs and also the aviation hubs to Sri Lanka, because uncertainty. There are other countries which are competing with Sri Lanka, like India. So what we have to do is we have to have an internal adjustment policy in which the government will have to transfer part of the revenue it has got, because in 2025, it has actually exceeded the IMF expectations. Now, IMF expectation was 15% of GDP as government revenue, but Sri Lanka had gone for 16.7%. The IMF expectation of the surplus in the primary account was about 1% of GDP, but Sri Lanka had gone for 5%. So now it is time for the government of Sri Lanka to transfer part of this money back to the people and make internal adjustments so that we'll be able to go through the crisis. It's a painful one, but we'll be able to go through the crisis. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vijayawardena. We appreciate very much those insights that you brought in. And adjustment, yeah, well, that's the way. The third of our keynotes is to be sounded by the Executive Director of the Lakshman Kadargama Institute here in Colombo, and Mr. Ravinatha Arya Singh. So, over to you, Ravi. You are muted. You are needing to unmute your microphone.
Sorry, yes. I was now presently I am Executive Director of the Regional Center for Strategic Studies. I want to make that slight correction. Delighted to be joining you and others on this panel. A very important event. I think there have been many conferences and seminars on this subject, but something focusing more pointedly, and I think the way Muttasa laid it out, it is a kind of essentially what is in this for us, what is the direct effect on people, the country as a whole. And Dr. Vijayavardhana's comment, I think I was also going to say that framing it in this way of crisis and opportunity while being provocative, I think it is a little hard to pick whether it's a crisis or an opportunity, because the combinations of the forces that work at these issues keep changing from time to time. So if someone thought that 1 minute it's an opportunity, the next minute it might be a crisis. So I think it is better to, rather than trying to see it as a crisis or an opportunity from my vantage point, it would be to try to make sure that you stay afloat at this time, and from a foreign policy perspective, looking at it also from a slightly geopolitical perspective, to not make a big mistake. Today you hear, if we only had done this, if we only had done that, being said, but I think there is a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, and it is good that we, at least despite all the various positions we have taken in our geopolitical positioning over the past, particularly the past 15 years or so, that we are at a place where we are able to at least navigate the country's concern without too much trouble. And I think we've been put through about a couple of tests. One, naturally, was the reaction to the attacks, the sinking of the Iranian frigate, and the granting of shelter to the Iranian sailors. I think I don't think there is anyone who faults the way Sri Lanka acted on that in terms of both international law as well as the Geneva Conventions. And I think the way we handled it has been appreciated all around. Now, there are those who would say you should have condemned it stronger, but I think in the foreign policy realm, a country has to decide positions it takes on the basis of a mix of factors. And I think your self-interest is prime. And what you can do, rather than screaming from the rooftops, is to try to balance your actions in a tangible way which does not displease or create problems with any one country. So if people felt that we didn't do enough in condemning, I think that was corrected in the UNGA, UN Security Council resolution, where while almost 140 countries co-sponsored a resolution at the very beginning of this conflict, including all except Nepal from South Asia, Sri Lanka abstained on that, Sri Lanka did not co-sponsor that resolution. And I think that was an expression of our choosing and taking a moral stand about a conflict, because that resolution did not include where the conflict started. So I think that was interesting. And again, on the ceasefire and the negotiations which are taking place, Sri Lanka's reaction has been positive and helpful. Not that we can do very much about it, but at least we have not antagonized anybody by the stances we have taken. And I think this mix of positions we have taken has helped Sri Lanka position itself in a manner, in a very difficult situation where it hasn't necessarily lost. I think the problem really here, and I think I'm happy that the panelists are going to talk about sectoral dynamics on this issue. is that a lot of things we are going to be talking about, which are problems today, and I hear diversification of products, diversification of markets. Why is there no more? Is not enough FTIs. These are problems which have been there through time. And I think the current Middle East crisis doesn't makes it any more, nor does it make it any less. And as Dr. Vijayavardhana said, and Muttasa said as well, it might be a good chance for us. And I don't know how many chances we need on this. We should have, if we didn't get it right, we should have got it right when the Trump tariffs 1 year ago was put to start diversifying. I don't see much diversification as a result. I think that this is another wake-up call for Sri Lanka to try to understand that it might be better to go to make the fundamental structural changes. I also agree totally with Dr. Vijayavardhana, who made the point that this is not a time to try to be maritime hubs and all that. If we can, if there is some traffic, air traffic or container traffic, which we can help people get on with what's going on, we should do that. Not really in terms of trying to make a big buck out of it, but in being helpful, because I think that is the kind of thing which the international community at large will appreciate. And in the medium and long term, all the countries, and some of these countries like Russia, we have passed them on over years because we did not want to antagonize other countries. And today, when we go to them asking for oil or other products, I think they remember that we were not there. I think even Iran, when you look at the past, that problem has been there. So I think this provides an opportunity for us to correct those anomalies, and hopefully that will be helpful. And I think trying to piggyback right on any one country at this point, this is not the time to hitch bandwagons onto anybody, because nobody knows where those bandwagons are going to lead. So I think we are at least in the foreign policy realm, we are in a position where we can navigate through this storm because our lines of communication have been open. We should capitalize on it just to make sure that we are helpful where possible, and that we leave our channels of communication open for future reference. Thank you.
Thank you too, Mr. Ravinatha Arya Singh. We appreciate those points made as well, and a useful phrase about correcting the anomalies. Yeah, well, that's one of the opportune things to pursue. Now will come the panel discussion, but just before that, we would like to acknowledge the support we have from our webinar sponsor. So here's their message. And so to the panel. Now we have quite a wide, broad range of professionals who are here and able to deal with different aspects of their own businesses and enterprises, and of course, how this crisis opportunity matter plays out with them. So, the chairman of the Commercial Bank of Ceylon, Mr. Shahan Musin, is with us, as is the chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism Advisory Committee, Mr. Dilip Mudadenya, who's also head of marketing and events, cinema, hotels, and resorts, and also is a vice president of the John Keels Group. Then we have Mr. Arada, I beg your pardon, Ms. Tanya Abesundara, chairperson of the Ceylon United Business Alliance, which is known by the initials Cuba. Then Mr. Susanta Silva, past managing director and CEO of Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the MD of RM Parks Private Limited. Then Mr. Chaminda Kumarasari is the chairman ACCA Sri Lanka, and as you've already been notified, this event is being sponsored by ACCA. Mr. Dinu Kolamage, Chief Research Officer and Cartographer and former Director of the International Affairs at the Presidential Secretariat. Then too, we have Ms. Gayani De Alvis, Chairperson of WCIC, and Mr. Felix Ferrando, Chairman of JAF. That's the chamber that is focused on the apparel industry. So that's the panel. And to engage with them, we have the economist, Mr. Talal Rafi, and I hand over proceedings now to Talal.
Thanks, Arun. Am I audible? Sorry.
Yes,
Right.
you can
Sure,
be.
right. Yes. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure, and thanks to the organizers for having me. So I'll start off with Sharhan, Chairman of Commercial Bank. So the first question is, how is Commercial Bank managing FX exposure and trade financing risk for Sri Lanka during this conflict, especially given our fragile IMF recovery?
Thank you, ICCSL, for having me here. So, Commercial Bank has always had a long-standing leadership position in foreign exchange and trade finance that is supported by a highly experienced team we have there. In the current environment, especially given that we are in the post-IMF recovery phase, we're currently focusing on three specific areas to manage through this situation. And I think we all heard how serious the situation is. One of it is to managing a very tight FX position and liquidity management. We actively monitor our net open position with both internal risk limits and central bank guidelines. We also place greater emphasis on matching flows and using natural hedging whenever possible by aligning foreign currency inflows and outflows. The second thing is the disciplined and selective trade financing. We want to continuously support strong trade requirements, but applying enhanced credit evaluation. So attention is given to underlying transactions, repayment capacity, counterparty strength, sector exposure, and of course, the availability of foreign currency cash flows. But we also manage this in line with the broader economic priorities, especially mindful of essential imports and also the focus on supporting export industries. Final item I would highlight is the hedging and risk mitigation tools. We take our FX advisory piece for our clients very seriously. Where market liquidity and regulatory conditions permit, we always encourage customers to use appropriate hedging instruments, forward contracts and swaps. Our objective is really to help reduce avoidable currency risk rather than remain fully exposed in this environment. The final intention really is to support customers through this period while safeguarding the bank's balance sheet.
Thank you, sir. So the next, Dilip is not here. I'll go to Tanya. So what are the most immediate threats your SME members are reporting right now? I mean, if you can just give a brief thing on some of the things that are quite urgent.
Thank you, Talal. It's a pleasure having to be here once again, and it's great. If I may correct you, it was just the the briefing of the SME situation right now. That's what you want to know, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there are few expectations that has right now expected through the government for the SME organization, but this like the war, the Middle Eastern war has impacted hugely on the SMEs right now, because for the simple reason the fuel costs increasing tremendously. That is a huge hit for us, because if you were to take the product line for any organization of SME, 60%, that is means the utilities are through fuel, raw materials, electricity. All this comes down to fuel. I mean, transportation, everything is under fuel. So basically increment of virtually, if you were to talk in impact of about 40 to 50% on your goods that we manufacture has been having a price increment. But the market sustainability has not made any change right now for us because of the world situation. So with this, as SME organizations, I feel this is more than my field. This is as a whole what we are trapped back again into a jar. Like in 2022, 26 is also going to be a very, very diversification, very year that we will be facing a lot of challenges, because due to fuel increment, cost increment in overseas onto raw materials, then of course the tax net coming down to 3 million from 6 million, from 9 million to 6 million to 3 million. Then of course with the increment of utilities, so everything has virtually impacted upon the SME organizations right now. So if you were to take in wholly, our gross profit has never increased. We are not having a net at the moment. Basically all SME organizations are not running on a net profit. We don't earn any net. So when it comes to banking, now we are going to face a huge situation in the future, because facilitating our loans, facilitating our capital, working capital, and then Ditwa was also another impact that hit us very badly, and we are still to recover from that impact. So with the current war situation that has occurred worldwide, that is a huge blow. So most of our raw materials are brought down from either from India and China, and then the diversification route that we are being taken is also another problem. So the shipping cost has gone up by about 60%. So utilities gone up by 40%, shipping by 60%, fuel by another 40%. Now just imagine the situation we are right now, and the threshold of the VAT coming down from 6 to 3 million is also another impact that is will be occurred. And then of course the cess being taken out onto 2,000 odd items is also another impact for SME manufacturers, because our vulnerability, we have no protection. Everything is not a pro. Everything is now we are exposed to a lot of go-getters. Now as small organizations, now SME is, though we call small, it's about from 50 million to about 500 million. Now these multinational companies also have branched out to SME organizations. So now for us, competing with these multinational companies is become a huge force, because they have financial facilities, they have the working capital, but the SME organizations do not have. Now when we have to go into a bank trying to get working capital, though everybody says yes, the avenue has been made, the government keeps saying yes, we have created so many avenues that SME organizations can obtain facilities, but end of the day, no matter what, there are so many bankers. It is the crib that matters. If you're in the crib, if you are on MPL, we have no breathing space.
Right.
So
Thank
where
you.
do we go from here?
Thanks, Tanya. Yes, sure. I'll come back on that. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. So, if I can jump onto the tourism side, Dilip, just a question. So, how is Sri Lanka tourism responding to the airspace disruptions? I think about one third of the airlines come through the Gulf. So that will going to affect the European and the Gulf travelers, as Murtaza was just saying before. The Europeans are the ones who stay longer also. So. How is it the situation?
Yeah, so just to give you, thanks, Tala. Just to give you an idea in terms of the last departure point in coming to, if you analyze that. So Dubai is about 11%, Doha is 10.3, Abu Dhabi is about 7%, and then you have Sharjah, which is about 3%. So altogether, it's about 34% of arrivals actually got affected during that time. So technically, we have seen a 50% reduction in arrivals. There are two things. One is accessibility. So the accessibility is actually been constrained completely through this. The number of airlines are coming to Sri Lanka, especially Qatar and Emirates have actually got stuck with their operations. So that's 34%. That's one element. Second element is the long haul carrier. Basically, traffic has decided more or less based on the tour operator feedback that they are more easier for them to actually travel within Europe. And so anyway, from about April to about July, August, we have a low season coming from Europe. So they anyway travel within Europe. But this time we were expecting little at about 15% growth, and that growth seems to be not coming through from European countries. So as a result, we see the European arrivals, which is about 40% of the arrivals, will get affected for a period of time. Having said that, it also can quickly bounce back. The good news is that the Russian charters, and we are looking at it, they haven't canceled anything in November except one or two. They haven't really taken that out, which has huge winter operations. So we need to now look at and see whether there's an impact on winter operation. But immediately from the day it started, we have seen about 50% drop in arrivals than what it used to be.
Thanks, Dilip. Thank you. So if I may move on to Susanta Silva, Yes. Just a question, if the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted, I mean, let's say it continues for a month or two, like how adequate are our fuel reserves, and how can we cope? What would be the situation if we can have a briefing?
Thank you, Talal. Thank you. Actually, the supply of fuel to the country is definitely, I mean, there is no doubt has been limited because of this war crisis, because most of the fuel also came from Dubai and the Middle Eastern countries. But luckily, we have a source of supply, sourcing the fuel from Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and so on, things like that. But then there are also, I'm referring to the refined fuel. Refined fuel are available, but the crude is a bit of a problem for Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka has a limitation of getting the crude to the refinery, because our refinery is a pretty old refinery. It's more than 60 years old, and it is made for actually originally for Iranian crude. And then later, when the Iranian embargo came in, the CPC was able to find a alternate crude that is from Abu Dhabi. But unfortunately, now that is also very difficult to get in. And recently, we got one shipment, and that again after the closure of the refinery. Now, when the refinery is closed and then stop working, then for you to restart another 2 weeks, you need to again to do the maintenance and things like that. Refinery is not supposed to be stopping unless it is for maintenance. So there is a bit of a challenge over there, but now they have the opportunity to start running, but then they got to source another crude vessel before they finish the crude that they get, and they already got it. So crude, of course, have a bit of a limitation at the moment, because the Merban is the one that we used to, now using at the refinery. But we also have found another alternate crude, which is actually WTI, which is from USA. But only thing is there is no problem of sourcing that, but only thing is it's a far distance, and it takes about 30 to 35 days to come, and the freight cost is very high, and so on, things like that. And that is the limitation that we have on the crude. But on the refined product, yes, we can get it from Singapore. But as you all know, and we all know, anything and everything is decided on supply and demand. When the supply is small and then the demand is more, naturally the price is going up. So it's very, very expensive at the moment. Actually, on 2nd of April, the diesel barrel, just a barrel, is about over $292. I have never seen this kind of increase in the world, you know. I mean, in 2014 and also 2022, during the COVID crisis, it never went up more than $150, you know. But this time it has gone up to 292. That is just the price in the market, Singapore market. Singapore, we call it Singapore Platts.
Yes.
But on top of it, you have to pay the premium, which is called another part of the price, that contribute for the profit of the supplier, then the insurance, then the freight and all that. But this normally in a range of $5, but it has also shorted up to $60. So that means the barrel actually virtually went up to $350. So this is a serious challenge that we are in as of today. Even though the clean product or the refined product price have come down slowly, but again, I can see it now moving upward again from today. So this is a serious crisis. Now, there is I mean, of course, there was a media news went on around that crude oil 286 and all that, but it was not crude oil actually. It is the diesel and the petrol prices. Actually, crude oil, yes, when you look at it, WTI or the best, the crude oil prices, yeah, it's more around 105 and so on, things like that. But that is crude. So you could refine it and then sell it and then add it to that, then the supply and the demand will come into the picture and the price will move up.
Right.
So the fact of the matter for us is little beyond that. That is a serious challenge for us. And I can see Tanya also pointing out on the cost effect in this the SME sector. Now, the question is the price that we are selling at this as of today in the normal market, whether it is reflective. Is it really reflective, cost reflective pricing? It is not. Actually, to be honest, now a diesel is making a loss per liter at the moment is over 280 rupees. So this is serious. So in other words, if you really wanted to reflect the cost in the market, then it has to be up by 280 rupees, something like that. That's what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, the thing is that what we are lacking here is we are not reflecting the reality. What we should do is, because this problem is not a Sri Lanka problem, or not this is not a government problem. This is the problem of the war. Actually, it is a Middle Eastern war. It is war of the war, actually, the world. So therefore, if we don't reflect the pricing to the right prices, so what happen is then the petroleum industry people, now at the moment we have 4 people, all 4 people will not be able to import, even though it is available in Singapore. You know, you can't now see, if you bring a vessel, normally average vessel cost for 40,000 ton was around 27 to 30 million. Now it has gone up to 70 million. So it's more than double at the moment. So, but we are selling at a loss. So then the whole operating companies, including CPC, will not be able to survive. That is one side of the coin. Let me tell the other side of the coin. Is now we are costing at a half a price of the diesel. Now anybody who is produced or anybody who's doing the service like a tourism or anything, or room service or selling, they are costing half of the diesel cost, even the electricity. So that means the cost of the item that we produce not reflecting the real costing. So if it is import, that means we are exporting. If it is exporting, we are exporting under cost. So that means somebody else is benefiting. Sri Lanka is not benefiting. Sri Lanka is losing at a whole. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. I have a question. I'll come back to you on the next thing. So, Chaminda, if I can move on to you, how well prepared are Sri Lankan corporates in terms of scenario planning, risk disclosure for shocks of this scale?
Thanks, Talal. I think I'm audible. Right.
Yes.
I think the real crisis is not disruption. It is being unprepared when opportunity comes. So I think before we talk about seizing opportunity, I think we must be strong enough to withstand the disruption from our end. So that's what we are talking about in terms of risk. I think, in my view, overall, Sri Lanka is better prepared than before, especially during 2022. Based on the learnings. But I think this preparedness is somewhat uneven. Large organizations like banks and multinationals or listed companies, they have their own methodologies, policies, and governance uh, driven by the regulators. But mid-sized organizations are still not very keen in looking at risk as a strategic lever, because they look at mostly as a compliance ticking the box exercise in most cases. And that's where we need to be very careful, because that's why even Tanya mentioned about SME exposure. That's purely because of that unpreparedness. And in terms of reporting, we have a stronger governance now, even S1, S2 reporting and stock exchange requirements, all that is there. But here is the point, that the weakness is not about missing section in the annual report on risk. It's about the depth of the stress testing that we actually do, especially in terms of the foreign exchange exposure, supply chain risk, geopoliticals. We talk about all these, but how many organizations actually conduct a stress test to see the impact under scenarios such as, in the current context, oil price spikes, shipping disruptions, and remittance pressure, tourism arrivals, and working capital crisis, all these. So we need to have that real stress testing culture in organization. At the same time, we must understand this Middle East shock is a multi-channel risk for Sri Lanka. I'll give you some context to this, because we have exports, tea, tourism, oil prices, remittances, all in this basket. For example, if you look at the remittances alone, Sri Lanka receives over 8 billion in annual remittances. This is around 8% of GDP. And nearly 70% of these remittances origin from Middle East. So see the impact on that side. And if you look at the labor migration results in 2025 alone, 80% of the foreign employment departures within first 9 months were from Middle East. So in my view, especially from the finance professionals, they must now go beyond reporting what happened to modeling what could happen. The scenario planning should be somewhat like regulating in your monthly dashboards and reporting, rather than just an annual exercise. So to sum up, Talal, I would say
Yes.
Sri Lanka corporates have learned crisis management based on what we have experienced in the past. But what is now important is to institutionalize this crisis anticipation.
Right. Thank you, Chaminda. Thanks. I can move on to Dinuk. The question is, what scenarios should Sri Lankan policymakers and businesses be planning for the next 6 to 18 months? I mean, from a geopolitical perspective.
Thanks, Talal. Well, if we look at the current situation right now with the war in Iran, we are seeing that the entire rules-based conduct on the geopolitical stage has been completely cast aside by all the players. So as a non-active participant in this conflict, and I use the participant because we are being impacted by the war, we need to prepare for further disruptions. And now when I talk about disruptions, I don't necessarily focus solely on disruptions to the supply chains or to the shipping routes, because that is obviously something that anyway we are having to deal with currently. But I'm also talking about the need for us to anticipate and prepare for our export and import markets as well to close doors on us in many ways. Last year, we saw this when the US imposed their tariffs globally, and Sri Lanka was also hit with it. Our export markets were impacted, and there was calls for diversification of our export market. Now, as these conflicts continue, whether it's the war in Iran, which we aren't sure whether it's going to end anytime soon, we are seeing, though, that globally economies are heading towards a recession. Whether they will enter a recession is still to be seen, but they're definitely heading. So they're definitely going to look to consolidate their markets. And one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to look at reducing the outflow of their foreign reserves through reducing exports. This morning, I read that tea exports from Sri Lanka has dropped 17% in the last year on year, which is a clear indication of an immediate impact to our exports, tea being one of our higher export earning products. Similarly, our imports also, if we look at, for example, fuel, and it's going to spread to agriculture, to medicine, all of those imports also are going to reduce, because we're going to see countries once again looking to show up their own stocks in the anticipation of future shocks down the line. So fuel imports, and especially as a country that imports a lot of refined product, I think we can expect to see that there's going to be greater competition for less product, because many of these countries like India, Singapore, they're going to be storing up in the event of future stocks. So definitely one of the big things that we're going to see is we're going to see globally and on the geopolitical stages, countries closing ranks, maybe with themselves and a few other allied countries, or maybe just for themselves. If we look at the current conflict, we have seen that Europe has decided to focus on their own energy solutions. They're not really getting involved in trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and get the fuel flowing that way. And the region that is worst hit by this, the closure of the Strait, is Asia, and especially South Asia and the Indian Ocean. And we're seeing there isn't a global efforts to balance out and get the economy moving again. So I think in that sense, we got to one of the biggest scenarios is, along with the disruptions, is the fact that Sri Lanka is also, and it's not just Sri Lanka, it's Sri Lanka and many other countries. So I think we're going to have to really look at diversifying both our energy sources, our export markets, and maybe even our import markets, to ensure that isolation that will spread not just to Sri Lanka, but to other countries, especially the smaller states, is not going to be as bad as it potentially could be.
Thanks, Diluk. Next, I can go to Gayani. Yeah. How are the Hormuz disruptions affecting Sri Lanka's import costs, export competitiveness, and the shipping insurance? That would definitely have had a major impact, but to what scale? And if I can also, Gayani, ask, even if the strait is open today, how long will it take for things to be back to normal? A rough guess.
Okay. A tough question. The second part is very tough, because you can never say what will happen. It changes every minute, right? So anyway, thank you for inviting me. Also, I'm also representing Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. I'm the former president of CILT. So basically, all of you spoke about various cost escalations, fuel to cost due to SME operations and all of that. So if you really look at the import cost per se, we all know, because of the Red Sea and Hormuz Strait issue, ships are rerouting. So there is an additional cost of freight as well as the rerouting costs. So that's because of a higher fuel cost. And on top of that, Gulf disruptions also are pushing global freight rates also up. So obviously for imports, it has a huge bearing on that, especially for energy and bulk commodities, right? And when it comes to insurance, again, there is a war risk surcharge and all of that. In fact, war risk insurance premium in the Gulf have risen by up to 50%. And also in extreme cases, the premium reached 3% of vessel value per voyage during peak tension. So that's the kind of magnitude of cost escalations that we see for imports. So direct impact for Sri Lanka, therefore, is of course the landed cost will increase, obviously because of the higher freight, insurance, and also there will be delays, right? So fuel is the biggest vulnerability, as we all spoke about, and we all know about it. We need to understand the supply disruption. Okay, having the product and buying it at a higher price is one thing, but disruption is another problem. Supply chain disruptions are inevitable for the industry. So, I mean, Tanya also mentioned about the SME issues. Obviously, this is going to be a big problem for the industry. So, bottom line, imported inflation is inevitable. And of course, even Muttasa and all of them spoke about the fuel, food, fertilizer, and consumer goods prices will anyway increase, right? So in terms of export competitiveness, if you really look at it, I mean, of course, later on, another speaker will speak about that. But we need to also understand freight cost also will increase, like in the import space. Export also will go up in view of the war risk insurance surcharge, because longer shipping routes mean that it'll take a longer time, and then you will also have increases in cost per container and working capital cycles. So all that has a huge bearing on the export sector as well. And we also have rerouting because of the delivery delays, right? We also see delivery delays and reliability issues. So those are also impact, and there will be a huge impact to margins as well. So exporters will face a huge dilemma in that front as well, because you may have to absorb costs. And you will, have to have lower margins. You will be faced with that as well. So market access would also be a problem. In fact, earlier Muttasa again was talking about how the tea traders, how are they managing with circuitous routes and all of that. So with all of that, you will have market access disruptions while you will take a longer circuitous route, and that will also have a huge bearing on the cost as well, cargo movement. So again, in the export sector, especially in the apparel, tea, rubber goods and all of that, will face margin erosions and reduce competitiveness. And insurance and anyway risk environment I already spoke about earlier. So sometimes there will be, I mean, we don't know to what extent this will pan out, because even the peace talks are happening, and nobody, both sides are not seeing eye to eye also in Islamabad. So we need to also, some of the vessels also may in time to come will refuse to enter the Gulf without any insurance. So that will be another problem. Or demand higher freight rates to compensate risks. So those are issues that we will again, Sri Lanka will anyway, exporters and importers both will face higher CIF costs and difficulty in securing shipping slots. All of these. Having said that, there are some opportunities. Maybe in the next round, if we have time, we can talk about opportunities. But it's a highly uncertain environment. But we need to also see how best we can manage during this difficult time period. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Karen. Thank you. So for the second round, if I go back to Sharhan. Yes. Hi. I mean, coming on to remittances, as Murtaza said, about 70% of remittances come from the Middle East, 80% of the people working there. And I mean, we are seeing reports like an attack on a desalination plant or food going in. And yesterday I saw that if there are ground operations, that Iran has warned of a sort of a military action against Dubai, or even sending troops there. So in this kind of a phase, like what is the banking sector, the plans? I mean, if there is a very drastic disruption when it comes to employment and payment channels.
Thank you, Talal. I mean, there are two key risk factors here. The first one is a disruption to the payment channel, and the other one is a disruption to migrant employment. So both were kind of highlighted as key issues. The second one is much more structural. It takes a medium to longer term plan to really readjust to that. What the banking sector can do is three things again I'd like to highlight here. The first one is to diversify the remittance corridors and partnerships. The Gulf will remain a core source of remittances, but we are seeing increasing remittances in some of the other markets, particularly the UK corridor. Italy has always been a strong market. Then East Asia, Australia, North America, these markets also have good potential. So that, I think, the diversification of the remittance corridors and also broadening partnerships with money transfer operators, fintech platforms, card networks. So those would help reduce reliance on single region or channel. However, the longer term adjustment requires coordination with the labor authorities and governments to develop a higher skilled migration pathways, which is the only way to really diversify your risk, which is quite heavy in the Middle East. The second item is really strengthening the formal and digital remittance channels. What I mean by that is we must make the formal remittance channels faster, cheaper, and easier to use. This means we invest in mobile and app-based remittance platforms, improving settlement speed, and strengthening partnerships with global providers. The objective is to really retain or increase what is within the formal banking system and reduce the incentive to use informal channels. Finally, to improve labor market and payment channel risk monitoring, I think one of the speakers earlier talked about having dashboards and platforms. We take that quite seriously. So we closely track employment trends, wage payment conditions, visa policy changes, and also, of course, the geopolitical developments that we are looking at. So early warning indicators can help us prepare for potential layoffs. Murtaza mentioned also that initial indications are showing some signals to us. The priority is to really protect the continuity of the remittance inflows by widening market access, strengthening trusted formal channels, and improving early detection of risks and key migrant worker markets.
Right. Thank you. Thanks. I'll just go to Dilip. With the current situation, there's a lot of disruption, especially when it comes to tourism in the Gulf regions. So, there is even a threat of Iran using ground forces in Dubai. It's an extremely remote case, but in today's world, anything is possible. Do you think Sri Lanka could position ourselves to get some of the tourism that may be going into that region towards us? And what would be some of the things that we need to do?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that the tourism's actually, in terms of arrivals, are divided into two, intra-regional and inter-regional. So obviously the inter-regional travel seems to be a lot affected between the short to medium term. And even though there are arrivals happening, which is encouraging at the moment, so if you look at Sri Lankan Airlines load factors, even up to October, they are really reasonably full. But we can actually focus on intra-regional travel. And this is something actually we were saying for a long period of time due to the short-haul travel, especially focusing on South Asia, mainly in India, which has a huge component. I think that's going to be something which we really can focus on and promote. And I think we very correctly, the tourism board recently went to Bangladesh, and these countries have a very notable and significant amount of outbound market. Not that we can completely replace the European market, but it can actually bring a short-term solution. So that could be one. So the market, I wouldn't call market diversification, but a market expansion, because we need a dual strategy in Sri Lanka. While we are full in December to April on traditional year, from April to November, there is always capacity which we need to look at intra-regional travel and also extending from the east to far east as well. So that could be a strategy that we deploy very effectively, since the airlines are actually still operating and coming into the country. That's number one. The visa scheme needs to come into to play effectively at very, very soon. There are some rumors that Thailand might want to introduce the visa scheme to India, which is not really confirmed. But if that happens, there could be some impact, positive impact for Sri Lanka as well. So that could be a second element that we looked at it. And the third one is actually this demand for tourism. This is a pent-up demand, can happen anytime. So if this actually change immediately, we would see the influx of numbers coming in and will continue. So we need to be ready for it. We can't have a situation where the whole plant is closed down and we don't have people, and then the whole thing is run down completely as it used to be when we actually started after the COVID and the economic recession in 2022-23. It took about at least 2 years to recommence or restart the process. So it's important that we look at that. And normally tourism is actually coming in cycles. But this time, of course, we didn't have that 7-year cycle. Unfortunately, this happened. But we don't know when will the next one happen. So it's very important from operator's perspective. Also, we actually manage this and have those scenario plannings properly, and then you have some internal cash flows to manage this. It's difficult. I mean, it's easy to say that, difficult to do it, especially for SME sectors. They have their own problems coming in when the numbers are not really there. But we can really focus on the South Asian numbers and the Indian subcontinent as a short to medium term and also a long term strategy. Then I think we should be able to get these numbers coming in. But of course, having said that, the fuel and the jet, the fuel prices and the jet fuel is a very, very concerned element that currently just impacted a lot. If you look at it, currently something which is around $1,000 the ticket was, it has now gone up to about almost double the price from Europe. So this is actually a major concern for the operators, and people don't want to spend so much of money. And if that happens, we'll have a serious issue because we are an island nation, and only thing, 98% of the arrivals coming from the airlines. So we need to look at summaries that the intra-regional travel, so that we focus on to get it immediately. And the second thing is to ensure that the current tourism mechanism actually runs continuously, and focusing on a little bit of city tourism as well, where there is a bit of a capacity for MICE movement, etc.
Sure. And Dilip, if I can just follow on for a quick answer. I mean, I was a consultant for the EU, so where we are doing on the investment climate. So when it comes to tourism on the infrastructure side, anything particular you would like to be upgraded? Any areas?
Yes. So there is a very interesting project which the World Bank, there's a $70 million program coming to uplift Colombo. And I think they're starting that from September, which is a great news. And then I think ADB has another mechanism up to 200 million, which they are working on for Trinco, Sigiriya, and that area. So we need this infrastructure development on it to come in. And there's a Beira Lake cleaning program also happening. While these things are happening at the central highway, will have a major impact on how the dynamics of tourism works, because that is going to take one hour only, and then going from there to the rest of the part. So currently what we have is that, the infrastructure, what we have, we can manage it. Of course, the construction cost, all these things are very expensive, but currently, if you can manage with whatever the room numbers that we have, and then we can actually focus on that capacity where we can go up to 3 million tourists without any much of an issue. And also rearranging the visitor capacity in some of the critical areas, I think we should be able to manage the situation with that around 3 million numbers for the next couple of years.
Right. Thank you, Dilip. To Tanya, with all the supply chain disruptions, do you see an opportunity for Sri Lankan SMEs to fill the gap?
Talal, the opportunity would have arisen. The opportunities were there multiple times for SME organizations, but every time there was opportunity, the government has not paid any interest in trying to secure manufacturing industries, especially the SME industry. So we are exposed to too much of vulnerability. Now, to be very honest, I was listening to all these speakers talking, and then sometimes what I really realized was what Ravinath said, fundamental. We don't have any fundamental rights. We need to get our things first properly sorted out within even the government right now. The issues they are making, and they call itself mistakes, are really going to impact on the SME organizations down the line, though you all don't realize it, because every impact that makes by anybody in result, because we are, like I said, we are not a multinational company, and of course Charminder mentioned the SMEs are always unprepared. We are not to say we are not unprepared, we are prepared, but the thing is we can't think ahead, we can't focus ahead into a long-term policy making, because no policy is sustainable in this country. Today the policies are made, tomorrow the policies are revised. So how can we be prepared? If we are a multinational company, we have funding, but when it's SME, we have to be dependent on the banking sector. So if the banking sector is not prepared to help us, where do we go nextly? Is the government. The government is also not preparing any sort of proper regulation towards protecting the SMEs. Though it was said and done, it is never the case always. So I'm just telling you, Tala, just imagine the main reason what we will be focused in the future will be, okay, the biggest thing is facilitating our liabilities. Now, with all these things, with all these speakers and these gentlemen and these ladies with so much of wisdom they speak, look at the end result. There is about 200 to 300% increment in every aspect, because we are more of a importing nation than exporting nation. We import more than we export. So even to manufacture anything, 60% of the goods have to be imported as raw materials or anything. So end of the day, where is the possibility, where is the light end of the tunnel? We don't see any, because these liabilities are going to play back badly. First, the banks are going to go behind our loans. That is going to be the first thing within a couple of months' time, if we are not prepared enough to sustain our working capital. If you don't have a working capital, next option is the bank. Then when the banks are going to go behind, we won't get working capital aid from bank. Then how are we going to pay the salaries? Then the next thing is the salary. Then will come the taxes. If we are not paid our taxes, obviously the government will start running behind us. Then it comes to raw materials. How are we going to, to sustain our factories or anything? Where are we going to get our raw materials? So all this is going to play back on us. So I don't know, the possibilities were endless, because obviously when Corona hit, there were lots of possibilities where Sri Lankans could have obtained, but we let all these possibilities go. Now we are caught up in a situation. Now we are asking for possibilities, and the governments keep saying that, okay, what the previous government has done is playing back on us, and we can't do anything much. So end of the day, what is going to happen to nearly 4.5 million workforce that is hosted by the SME organizations? So I know there is possibilities, but for us to gain these possibilities, we need the support from the government.
Sure.
The government has to come forward. I always keep saying, it's the decisions that is made by the government and the central bank is what plays back on us.
Sure. Thank you,
Look at the
Tanya.
coal issue is played back on us. We had to pay for the utilities. Now the $2.5 million that was suddenly gone missing is also going to play back on us.
I think, thank you. Yes, sure. Thank you, Tanya. I think Dinesh will come to you with the next round, because I have to wrap it up. I can move on to Mr. Susanta Silva for a quick this thing. No, one particular other issue, what I see is, for example, the US is a very large exporter of oil. Do you see a possibility of, I mean, if the prices in the US go up, of export restrictions there? That could also impact us, if I can have a quick answer.
No, actually, I mean, there is another important factor. It's an opportunity also. Like, we have been talking about this trade balance between the US as well as in Sri Lanka. And there is a trade gap of about 3 billion. And it was actually a good opportunity if we can bring the crude from there. And that also, it's not only from US, actually, there are crude available from Argentina as well as from Brazil. So all these things can be sourced from that part of the world, and then it can come through the downs, via Africa, and then it can help us refining having the refinery working, and also the other part of the thing is, we have not objectively looked at how this refinery can be, at least to a reform to some extent, so that it can be workable. So there are so many actions that have been laid back, and that we have not taken into account all these years, and still we have not done that. And there are so much needed to be done in this industry. And I think now it is too late if we still just wait and wait and wait. If I look at it, crude price, if we import from USA, and then compare with if it is to come from Middle East, now it is not possible. And there is a gap of $7 between the barrels, but it can be covered up through the pricing. The freight is of course high at the moment, but it is an opportunity for us to look at it. And I think in that my second question you have addressed about the Trincomalee and Hambantota. Now these, especially Hambantota, has a bigger opportunity, but unfortunately we don't have tanks to unload the fuel. So that's another opportunity for us to have the tank capacity, because these are not for today, these are for future, because anything can happen. So we should be ready to store more fuel. At the moment, our capacity is just 1 month. If you don't bring the fuel in 1 month, so we got to run out. And then Trincomalee, if you take it, the tanks that were built by the not US, UK forces, during the First World War, after the First World War, 100 tanks, of course, one tank was destroyed by the Japanese bomb, but 99 remain. What happened to this 99 all this time? Nobody has looked at it to repair them. And then what happened is Indian Oil came in 2022 and they took 14 tanks. And then after sometimes there was a joint venture signed between the India IOC as well as Sri Lankan CPC, 61 tanks. Nothing is happening. Nobody's taking any interest. Nobody's developing it. CPC has 24 tanks, and I heard that they are doing at least 3 or 4 tanks now, but still, we are not ready. So what I'm trying to say is, this is an opportunity for us to develop our infrastructure and then be ready at least to store not 1 month, so 2 month stocks, so that we are ready to face any challenges. So this is a question mark actually with Tanya also. There is so much of laid back decision that is being taken. So we need to hurry up, we need to wake up, we need to take decisions, and also especially in this coal industry, there should be a proper regulatory aspect to be addressed. I know it is not only for industry part. Now even the pricing part is not being properly done, and therefore it can be risking at any point of time. Any organization is failing to bring the fuel. Fuel is available, but at a high cost. So we should be able to correct all these things and put it to the reality. We shouldn't be worry about, and also giving subsidy is not an answer. So it is better to be realistic and put the right price. People will, if they want to run their vehicles or the industries, they will take the fuel and run. Otherwise, they will stop it. So,
Sure.
this is what I requested. If you have any more question, please ask me. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Silva. I think
Talal,
Dinesh
just
will
a
come on.
moment. Shutting
Just
down
very
is a very
quickly.
easy thing, but what is going to happen to our liabilities? Is the government going to take over the liabilities when we shut down the companies? Please, I would like to know.
Sure. I think, sure. Right. So that's true. Thank you, Mr. Silva, and thank you, Tanya. I'll move on to Chaminda. So, do you see any opportunity for Sri Lanka to position itself as a regional finance talent hub? Sri Lanka is very well known in the accounting field for very skilled workforce, especially after this disruption. Yes.
Yes, sir. I think there is. We are already having a name for that, because we have a finance talent pool in Sri Lanka with global qualifications. We already operate in the IT BPM sector. And I think interestingly, I've seen if you look at the numbers, the first quarter of 2026 shows about estimated value of the export is about $450 million, which is 31% up from last year. So which shows the demand and the growth potential. Now, I think one thing we need to look at here is that when we talk about talent, we are worried about talent going out of the country, especially if you look at Gen Z. They are very, very keen in working in global context. So I think there is an opportunity for us to match this with the growing demand. But the real issue here is not the talent alone, Talal. I think how prepared we are in terms of our infrastructure and the technology platform available for us to support this growth, especially if you look at in our educational system, even the graduates that we produce, we still do not have a mechanism to produce the required talent in a proper manner through the educational system catering to that. So most of the time what we find is people who come out of the system, some are coming accidentally, some are coming because they could not get into elsewhere. So we have to get this whole process aligned. So that's why I told earlier as well, the real crisis is not the disruption, it is when we are not prepared, when the opportunity comes to us. So this is something that the government also need to focus on. I know there's a huge investment and attention towards improving the IT infrastructure and IT talent, but I think we need more focused approach in that. So the essence I want to highlight here is that when you're looking at remittances, also we talk about the disruption because our people are there. So why are we not looking at how to serve the global market, especially the Middle East market? There's a huge demand there from our side when we have the talent. Just to add one more point, Talal, because Tanya's point about this SME side, because what I mentioned was not that the SME is unprepared or anything, but what I said was the lack that expertise in doing what the large organizations do. So that is where we as professionals needs to intervene. I myself do that a lot, but they individually lack this. This is something even the government and the institutions must needs to intervene and support them in doing this holistically, because they don't have that as much as the large organizations do. Just to respond to that point.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chaminda. If I can move on to Dinuk. I'll just try to hand this over to Dinesh, so I'll move a bit faster if you can keep the answers to 2 minutes. Dinuk, the question is, how should Sri Lanka navigate its non-aligned stance with the major powers? Especially one example is, like, for example, we saw how India, after pressure from the US, stopped buying from Russia only to go back to Russia. So do you think lessons for Sri Lanka from these things? Yeah.
Absolutely. When we look at Sri Lanka's non-aligned stance, this is a product from 1961. And at that time, the global power structure was such that there were only two power blocks. Now, 65 years later, it's no longer a two power block or even a single power block, but we're now seeing regional power blocks emerging, bilateral power blocks emerging. So Sri Lanka's non-aligned stance and non-aligned policy also has to evolve. And we no longer have the luxury in many ways of just burying our head in the sand and ignoring issues that are taking place around us. So saying that means that we need non-alignment means that we can still stand on principle and ensure that Sri Lanka as our own national priorities are looked after, but also aligning ourselves with a region. And in this case, it would naturally be the Indian Ocean and the greater Asian region. A couple of weeks ago, Singapore's Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan came out quite firmly condemning the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, saying that they stand on freedom of navigation. Now, similarly, Sri Lanka also needs to come out, but Sri Lanka standing alone and just voicing their opinion will only take us so far. We need to now move forward and look at building up regional voices for these matters, which will continue to ensure that non-alignment and the principles of the Bandung Conference, which led to non-alignment, continue to stand. Right, as you rightly said, a power as big as India, they themselves found that they were getting, to an extent, pushed around by the US. They were buying oil from Russia, then they had to stop, only to now be told that they can buy again. Similarly, we also need to understand that we have to be able to ensure that there is security and stability in our economy and our geopolitical stance to ensure that we are guarded against big power rivalry. So very quickly, the main thing I would say is we need to explore the option of energy independence and energy security. And by doing that, the easiest and clearest way I would go about it is through renewable energy. Now, we are focused so much on fossil fuels and where is our oil coming from, where is our petrol coming from, without realizing that Sri Lanka has in excess of 60 to 70 gigawatts of solar and wind energy in the country. This is more than enough to power us and to export to India. So that suddenly Sri Lanka becomes a renewable energy hub for the region. So this is something that Sri Lanka needs to navigate to ensure that we have a strong foundation when we drive our principled, non-aligned stances in when we're going forward dealing with what is definitely going to be an explosion of big power rivalry.
Thanks, Dinuk. Then I'll go to Gayani. Just a question. So, of course, with the Middle East crisis, with Jebel Ali port and all hit, there would be an opportunity for Sri Lanka if this were to last longer. So, so what bottlenecks must be removed or what are the areas we need to focus on to capture onto this? Sorry, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think this current disruption, I think, has really given us a huge opportunity for Sri Lanka. Anyway, Sri Lanka's strategic location is really helping us to make use of this opportunity. I mean, as you may be aware, like 60 to 70,000 ships ply between east-west route, 10 to 6 to 10 nautical miles away from Sri Lanka. So, but at the moment, we only have 10 to 12 daily, calling in our ports. So there is a huge opportunity. But because we have this challenging situation, the carriers are really are now unable to move to those locations that are traditionally being used as their hubs. So they're skipping traditional hubs and splitting loops. So using intermediate transshipment modes closer to South Asia. So that is where our opportunity lie. So as you know, Sri Lanka's lifeblood is our transshipment status. So we are a transshipment hub. 80% of our volumes that we handle are transshipment volumes. So I think last year we had the highest, the TUs 8.29 million. So we have the opportunity to expand the capacity because these are sudden time-bound opportunities. This is kind of a windfall volume for us. I don't think unless we expand our capacity, if we don't have yard capacity enhanced, ancillary equipments and all of that, and we already are a viable by bunkering destination for many of the shipping lines. So all these things are opportunities for us to really work on. So we have to really look at the port efficiency. So we saw huge growth in volume because ships are now dumping the containers at our ports here. But we also have to be mindful, yes, while we give them the opportunity to do that, we also might undermine our port efficiencies. So there will be empty containers lying for a longer period of time. Already our ports are congested. We just during Aurudu and beyond, we had these ITT issues where the driver shortages led to that and all interterminal transfer. So all those things are impacting us if we don't really put our house in order. Having said that, we also have seen huge volume growth in Hambantota port. Vehicle carriers are moving there because the vehicles that are destined to the Middle Eastern ports are now using Hambantota, and we've seen a huge spike in the volumes there, and they have now expanded the yard capacity there. That is good news. So if they really get the hang of it and do that, I'm sure that will be a long-lasting opportunity for us. And there are a lot of things that we need to look at to improve the efficiencies as well as the digitalization opportunities and also the capacity enhancement. So all these things, if we really get it right, rather than only trying to be a transshipment hub, but we need to be a full-service maritime destination for the maritime needs in the world. So that will really help us rather than just talking about having it in manifestos in successive governments won't do. We need to really act on it. And this is something we have been talking for years, but I think it is high time for us to proactively work on because disruptions are going to be there all the time. It's here to stay. So if we don't proactively, at least don't work on it now, we'll have a huge lost opportunity.
Right. Thank you, Gayani. Thank you. Good to have you, Felix. I couldn't have you for the first round. So I'll give the last question to you, and after that, Dinesh can take over. What has been the real impact on the apparel lead times, freight costs, buyer confidence, and are we at risk of losing any orders to other competitive countries in the region? You're on mute. Right.
You're on mute.
Yeah, okay. It's okay now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, actually, I don't think that because of this situation, we're going to lose any orders or to any competitors because of the current situation in this mid-East crisis. But previous questions about the freight cost, yeah, have gone up really high freight costs. And the lead time, especially, was not really had big impacts because anyway, even prior to this war, we had to, I think the extended was, it was going through the South Africa around that. And that has already been, so actually the lead times got affected because of port conditions. Various ports, they have got congestion. And we got 3-4 days or maximum 5 days lead time got affected because of the port condition. Apart from that, rates have gone up really, both air freights skyrocketed, even sea freight to US, especially the exports and imports, both have gone up. But the real issue is coming from a couple of years back, because buyers not spending too much on apparel globally, because started with this Russia and Ukraine issue, and then came to Israel, the first attacks with the Palestine attacks. All these things led to customers are trying to all over the world, whether not only US. We have seen actually, thankfully, we were able to keep at least this number. Now, if you look at even currently, the exports from Bangladesh also have dropped by about 30-40% for the first 2-3 months. And so I don't consider this as we have opportunities here also. No, it's very difficult to say because we were not prepared. And I don't want to, it's not a complaint, but also we were not having enough resources, so infrastructure to cope up with that, because some people are always pointing finger and say, now this is a good time that, you can choose, go to the other markets, like apart from the US, go to some other markets. But how can we go to those markets when it's not for the international market is not a level playing field for everyone? Okay, so they have different, like for example, Bangladesh can access Japanese market very easily, same as India. But whereas Sri Lanka, very difficult to access our exports, not only apparel, but any exports to access Japanese market, very difficult because we had to pay duties, whereas Bangladesh and India, they can access without paying duties, so with paying very less minimum duties. Or similarly, there are many countries, Vietnam. So that's where that we have been telling governments for the last many years, please, because since the international market and all the governments are keep on telling we want to create a manufacturing economy, we want to create an export-oriented economy, but we don't have to leave to that nice, beautiful words only. We need action. And right now, even we don't have an office to work on this international trade, or maybe to work on the free trade agreements. So this is very bad. Even the previous regime, they had one office, but had only 2 staff members. So that's not enough, because when you talk to European Union or whatever, how they have, for example, I was able to listen to some European what do you call, diplomats, especially who are engaged in the trade. What they say is now, for example, even for tourism, what they do is they look at certain countries where they don't get enough customers and enough tourists. So they ask their diplomats in such countries, the Italian or French diplomats living in such countries, okay, we need to achieve these targets. Now, I think we need, for export purposes, we need really to use these diplomats, foreign diplomats, especially the trade missions there. Without that, none of our exporters, they don't have that resources to go and do all the research work or maybe to find out the new customers or whatever. 2 things we are lacking. One is we don't have those data. Another one, the next one is it's not a level playing field. So we need the support. There may be some customers, actually, they may be even paying the duty, they may be willing to import from Sri Lanka. But again, without this buyer-seller connection and not knowing that we are good for these products or whatever, it's not going to happen. So only Sri Lankan manufacturers can't do that alone. So that's where I think we would have able to get, now even like when you say African countries or sell to African countries, Middle East countries, yes, there are people willing to sell. But like there are so many manufacturers They are producing only for the local market. But producing only for the local market, because we have only 22 million, we are not able to grow. We need to look at the market as the global market.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Felix. And with that, I'll hand it over to Arun. Thank you very much.
Thank you too, Talal. We appreciate that very much. Now we very quickly and without too much delay move to some rapid fire questions that will be delivered to each of the panelists by Dinesh Virakodi, the chairman of SLID or SLID. So this is our final session. And we already had some ideas from comments that have been forthcoming. So those will be incorporated into these rapid fire questions that will be directed. Okay, over to Dinesh.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Talal. I have picked a couple of questions from the what came from the viewers. Dilip, can I start off with you?
Yeah, sure. No problem. Yeah.
So there's a question here which says, our tourism industry can grow by focusing on the Indian and the Chinese market. Why are we still running behind the European market?
So what we require is what we call a dual strategy. European markets actually have already there's established connectivity, established distribution, and brand is known. So therefore there is numbers already coming in, which is about 40%. So there's no need of saying no to that. So what we need is actually we need actually to the numbers to grow and bring that the extra numbers. That's why we have a December to April. December to April is what we have the European market, and we have from April to November or December we have a large amount of capacity availability. So why not we don't utilize it? Because if you can go to keep that number as it is, which is 600 or 1 million or 1.5 million that's coming in, and then add another 1 million into it, then that will basically add a lot of extra beds, actually extra number of tourists into the country. So that's what we are basically saying. Keep the bread and butter, which is European market, and go and expand into the intra-regional travel as well as China and the Far East.
Okay. Dilip, also there's another question here which I can connect with this. Somebody wants to know what are we doing to make the market attractive for Indians to come to Sri Lanka?
It's an interesting question. So India, basically, there are two types or three types. One, destination weddings. So they're looking at Colombo and Bentot area. So we need to go and actually, there's a huge amount of revenue that is available and most of the hotels having the buyout, etc. Second one is a MICE market, which is a lucrative market where they have moved for various types of business traffic. And the third one, of course, a leisure market. So what we need to do is, and the fourth one is Ramayana. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are seen and positioned well in India. And that amount of work needs to be worked out. We have seen in the past, Sri Lankan Airlines have done some tremendous amount of work for Ramayana promotion. So we need to be more active and more dynamic in our approach in the Indian market.
Okay. And also, I don't think you like this question. Somebody wants to know why you're not using the tourism money properly to promote Sri Lanka. You're collecting so much.
I'm only an advisory committee, so it's correct that there is amount, but of course, what happens is they need to go through the process and then spend this. So there is a collected money from TDL and other places. So now the good news is that the World Bank has come in and they have set up the secretariat, and the 5-year promotional plan is also approved, and they will also go for procurement quite soon. And I hope this time the procurement will be completed, and the global campaign, which everyone is asking, will be executed within at least a 1-year period that has been estimated.
Thank you, Dilip. Ravinath, this question, maybe you can take this. There's a question here. Do we need to rethink our policy given the dominance of the US? You're muted.
I know. I think in some way, the answer is pretty similar to Dilip's question on tourism. I don't think you need to throw the baby with the bathwater. What I think our problem has been is pretty much pendulum swinging. There have been times we've gone only after the US and at their behest kind of shutting out some countries. Other times at the request of China, we have done the same. We, at the request of India, have kind of cut some things off. I think so. So the point I think is this is not as though we can't deal with all these relationships at the same time. They may have problems with each other, but then that is not our problem. And in some way, I think the 2022 crisis, as I've said before on your forums, despite all the suffering and hardship people went through, brought us back to somewhere in the middle. Because if the money doesn't get unlocked, nobody is going to get the money. So I think we must take advantage of that, and rather than kind of trying to make quick deals here and there, which today somebody will come and offer us something which helps, but that might not long term be a sustainable policy. So I think the US, I mean, what are we going to do with all the 40% of apparel which goes to the US? If they cut it off tomorrow, we'll be wearing 2 shirts and 2 trousers. Okay, I mean, we know how, and also for that, getting that apparel, the state didn't do very much. I'm talking to the previous question. I mean, in the apparel industry now, why we are not big in Tokyo is because Tokyo doesn't need our apparel. I mean, there is a market flow.
Yeah.
And a very good story from COVID time. I'll say this because we can get short-term gain, but we can't sustain it. And Felix, you might kind of be familiar with this. COVID time, and I was secretary at that time, all of a sudden we got a request from the US and UK. You supply any amount of those kits for, what do you call them, PPEs, is it?
Yeah.
The kits. We will buy them. Okay, we are not going to get samples tested. And we got Chinese products and manufactured them for a while till China cut off. Then when China cut off, we ran into a big problem and we found other suppliers. And we did it for a while and sold it pretty well till things subsided. And then when others came into the market, our price we couldn't sustain and others took over. So that's the story of competitiveness. So along with opportunity, you must also have competitiveness if you are going to break into new markets, wherever they may be.
Thank you, Ravinath. A quick comment, Dinuk, from you as well?
Yeah, I think I agree with Mr. Agasinger there that we don't necessarily need to replace one with the other. We have had a long and beneficial relationship with the US, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But having said that, while continuing to consolidate our relationships with powers like the US, we do have to also expand ourselves so that we are always in a situation that we are never going to be short of friends. And if and when a time comes we're being pushed, we do have others to lean on for support to ensure that we're not dragged into, tensions or conflicts that really do not concern us. But definitely, I don't think we need to replace the US with anyone. We just need to expand our horizons in that sense.
Thank you. Quick comment from Felix as well, since a lot of your market is there.
Yeah, okay. Dinesh, in short, Ravinath was very correct. I think we cannot lose that US market. I mean, US, UK, European Union, those represent about 85% of our apparel market. But the issue is that is not enough going forward. We can't keep that big junk in those three. While keeping that, the volume still we can grow. Actually speaking, we still can grow in UK, US also. We can still grow. We grow, but we need to focus on other areas like the BRIC countries, and they are willing. I mean, we don't have an issue with our product quality or also price-wise. Also, we are competitive. But what becomes uncompetitive is when these importers they got to pay the import duties. That's the point that we become uncompetitive. So that's where that we need to the governments need to focus on how best we can capture these markets that we can't do as the exporters.
Thank you, Felix. Sharon, can I get a quick question to you? Yeah, Sharon, there's a question here. What can banks do to position itself to attract some of the Middle East money?
I think it's sort of a good question, something that we have been looking at in terms of the portability of the funds. I think one of the earlier speakers talked about the stability and the credibility of the financial system. This is something that is very important. We need to make sure the safeguards are there. But those messages where market confidence in our banking system as a stable place to park funds, this is important. So this is a very governance related matter. We need to make sure that we maintain the highest levels of governance and also send a clear message that we have a very strong policies of banking protection and banking security in the country. That's what I would focus on.
Thanks. Susanta, you can take this question. If oil spikes sharply, do we have any real buffer?
Yeah, actually, thank you, Dinesh, asking this. Actually, I mean, I've been explaining that there is a limitation that we have at the moment. I mean, buffer in the sense we can store around a month stock, so that's not enough for a, I mean, the lead time that we look at it when the ship has to come in. So I think we have no choice but to improve our facilities at the moment, and we got to take action ASAP. It's very, very important. We must carry at least 3 months stocks. At the moment, we are not.
Okay, thank you. Tanya, this question you can take. What is the key fundamental support you need from the banking sector to support the SME sector? You're muted. Muted.
Sorry. Yeah. Mainly, there are three very important things. That is a working capital. Working capital is never, as the government always says, they have facilitated. It has never been the case because end of the day, crib is the most important issue where they look into. So more than 60% of the SMEs are in the crib for MPL. So even the slightest thing, you can be a best of the paymasters. It happened to me as well. I have facilitated so many loans, but just because there was an issue where it's not my problem, also it was a bank's problem, where there was a loan that I have taken,
crib is
and
one.
it was
What
already
else?
paid.
So crib is one.
Crib
What
is one.
else?
So no, I'm saying these are very finer things, Dinesh. I don't know. You've been a bank also.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have come across this. So I have already paid the loan, but the crib was not updated.
Right.
So when the crib is not updated, your facility is being held till that it's been sorted out. So this is a huge problem. So what we kept on saying is you need to sort out these crib issues.
Okay.
Because it's never the case. Most of the time, it's not a fault. The other thing is, of course, like Phoenix said and who Dilip said and everybody else is talking about us being competitive. Competitiveness is a very big issue for us because for us to be competitive, we don't have the end results from for us to create, manufacture something for an affordable price. And of course, the market accessibility is not there. So the bank, of course, that is not a bank issue, that is a government issue. But the third most important thing is, of course, the government needs to intervene and look into the possibility what is going to happen in the next 3 months with these issues that has come forward, with the pricing that is going up. We are going to be, like I told previously, manufacturing is going to be a huge issue. We could manufacture, end of the day, selling the manufactured goods out there into the market. Like they said, it's a 21 million, very small market. How are we going to sustain? And if we were to close down, what is going to happen to our liabilities? Those are huge things. The government and the bank need to take into consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Gayani, maybe you and Chaminda can respond to this. In order to attract more MNCs into Sri Lanka, given the crisis in the Middle East, how do we manage our talent pools? Chaminda, would you like to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah.
Dinesh, I think as I mentioned earlier also, we have a very lucrative BPO market here in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, we have not been consistent in building that talent pool over the years. So we have different models, and even in the university system, we don't see that being happening. So the next problem is not just the talent, Dinesh, in terms of IT infrastructure, whether we are ready yet in terms of digital coverage and the speed at which we need to serve the global marketplace. The third point I want to highlight is that we've been discussing, even I remember even you, when you were heading the Human Resources Council also, you initiated a lot of good things. Even at the government level, we have some policies, but we unfortunately lack policy consistency. We don't have long-term policies. So there has to be some kind of a consistent policy framework to build these things over a period. Final point I'll pick before Gayani speak is about policy clarity and tax regimes. So these things also matters, because when we give signals to the global market, when we go talents, we need to be very clear about what we intend doing. Because to give you a very basic example, at what point in time when they initiate things, we have a policy framework and tax regime, which is totally different 2 years down the line. So then they're all investment plans and the dynamics can change. So I think that's where we need to be very mindful. I think one of the key things we must do is that when it comes to this kind of strategic policy making, it has to be politically independent. So that's where we need to bring in. I don't know how far we can make it a reality, but that's where I suggest.
Thank you. Gayani?
Okay, thank you. I think
Yeah.
I echo some of the top areas that he mentioned as well, same sentiments. But on top of that, similarly, I also work with you at NHRDC. I think policy is another important area, and also 52% of the population also must be addressed as well, the women, because we see a lot of skill migration, unskilled people are leaving, even especially in the logistics industry. If you don't really, get into digitalization, and especially in the port area, I mean, we happy to say that in the West Container Terminal, the newest addition to the port, and they have, automated the whole port to a great extent. Plus, they have now employed more females there as well. So you have opportunity to tap into that pool of women as well there. So the policy is another area, and also understand the real market needs, especially at the lower level. I mean, higher level universities are having courses and all of that. Every university is having logistics and maritime and supply chain areas, offering degree programs. But at the middle and the lower level, especially at the entry level, vocational training level, where we need to identify. So we have set up a logistics skills council at the TVEC. So now what is important there is to understand how do we really understand the demand and supply, and see how do we really develop programs to cater to that need, so that you have a captive pool of trained, skilled people who can gain fully employed in the industry as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Gayani. In order to close this session, I have one final question. What must Sri Lanka get right in the next 3 months to exploit the opportunities that are coming our way? Can I ask Ravinath to comment first?
Well, I think the main thing which we should get right is that we should resist the temptation of getting pulled into any one direction. Because I think that is a vulnerability. And that's why, for short term gain, you might do that, but it might mess up things in the long term. Right now, countries like Russia, Iran, which were outside our orbit, have in some way come back into our orbit. They were out of it for different reasons. So we are in a reasonably good place. I think what we should do is not to try to take sides and ride this through, because we will come stronger, because nobody who is taking sides looks like they are doing any better than us.
Thank you.
Sometimes they probably are doing worse.
Thank you. Dilip?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Dilip, your thoughts?
I think from a tourism perspective, we need to look at very strongly whether crisis or no crisis. That's where we can actually increase. So I was telling all the time is to focus more in intra-regional travel. We need to increase our market share there for resilience, to also overall increase numbers, and look at very closely the South Asian markets, so that it becomes Sri Lanka become a year-round destination rather than off-season and season.
Okay, thank you. Susanta, since energy is critical. Muted.
is a very good opportunity for us to now think of improving our facilities and especially utilizing and maximizing what is available to us, because we have now seen this is not the only time that we have seen this. We have seen even before, and now I think it is for us to now look at it how we can establish our facilities proper. One simple example, now there are certain facilities are actually underutilized. Say for example in Hambantota there are some gas facility available, but we are not using it. So likewise, and the port still not, we can build some more tanks and bring the more fuel into it. So I think all in all, it is high time for us to now concentrate to develop our facilities and have the fuel backup and for any crisis situation. I think that's what we should look at it. And moreover, the regulatory factor of the industry, we need it to be established ASAP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chaminda?
Yeah, Dinesh, I think if you look at the next 3 months, I think what we need to do is we need to look at short term. But while we look at short term, we should not forget about the long term implication, as rightly mentioned earlier. Yes, there is a saying on one side, never waste a good crisis. But what we say should not be seen as a fishing in troubled waters. It has to be something like we are giving signals also to the other parts. We have to balance the equation. At the same time, we must build immunity to the most vulnerable segments, especially the SMEs, as we discussed earlier, because we need to make sure that within these 3 months, they can survive. If they go out of business in the 3 months, then there'll be long-term repercussions as well. So there has to be some long-term, short-term policy interventions while we look at long-term implications.
Thank you. Dinuk?
Yeah, I think we have to straight away recognize that globally stability is, I think, out the window, and I don't think we're going to see that return anytime this year. So taking that into account, we'll have to really re-examine how Sri Lanka is integrated on the international stage. We'll have to explore avenues of diversification, both in terms of our export markets and our export products, as well as even energy. And I keep harping on this, that, renewable energy is the key to Sri Lanka. It's actually going to be the golden bullet for the economy. It's going to give us the opportunity to, one, ensure energy independence from regions that are volatile to conflict, and two, allow us to integrate with growing markets such as what we're seeing in South India, where they are looking for new energy sources.
Thank you. Sharan, are you still?
Yeah, Dinesh, I would say that, leaving the geopolitics aspects out, we may need to have both a defensive and sort of an offensive approach as well. A defensive approach will sort of along the lines of several of the speakers here. Given our limited resources, protection around vulnerable segments, I think that is critical. I think we've all touched on that. So that's the defensive part of it, but it needs to be highly targeted because the resource base is very limited. The second aspect is, of course, offensive. We have seen financial flows out of the Middle East heading towards Singapore and East Asia. And the concentrated effort to at least trap a small minority of that would have been helpful, but it goes back to my earlier point that financial stability, system stability, and security is a key component, and we may have to develop that a bit more.
Thank you. Gayani? Muted.
We talk so much about our strategic location and all of that. I think time is right for us to now act on it and making it a real full-service maritime destination. I think let's do less talk and act now. I think that's what my last thoughts.
Felix, you lead an important sector.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that this period there's nothing different that we can as exporters we can do, but what we can say is the bureaucrats and the government, they need to start walk the talk, because they have said so much. I think this is the best time for them to sit down or do whatever and get implement or do those things, because we are at the risk of maybe losing the GST plus also because the PTA thing. I think still nothing is happening fast. it takes so long. So these kind of things, the government need to make sure that, I'm not overly critical of the government, but I think they are listening. Of course, they are listening, but no action afterwards. That is very important. And although from apparel, but I come from Nigambu, which is a fishing area, to tell you, frankly, I think that is one area that's been seriously got impacted because there aren't enough space for them to export to Europe or whatever the countries, I think. And like tourism, we are saying we are beautiful island. All around, we are a small country, but we have big sea area. I think we are not utilizing that resource. No one. So that's, I think, something we need to, some people, some bureaucrats or some policymakers, whoever need to come look at something where we can go, because we have suffered, but no one is going to come and give free money to us. They have their own objectives, whether it's US or China or India or whoever. So we need to come up and say that what is the best we can sell and we can gain. And this is the best period that for the bureaucrats and the government to, because they can't come up with excuses, and this is not the time for the country to become again go for another change or whatever. At least we need some stability, like someone was mentioning about the policy consistencies, because we lack FDIs. Without FDIs, we can't grow, because in few years time we will not be able to, like Tanya also mentioned, we are more imports than less exports. So considering all these things, we don't have that potential to invest only from what we have in Sri Lanka, because we are not big. So there is nothing wrong in making certain changes to investment policies or whatever. We can't just let IMF drive, because sometimes we need to make sure show to the IMF that it's good for some other country, but it's not going to help us, because we are facing these issues. Because it's just that I don't think that communication is happening. We are just taking everything IMF is throwing at us without basically confronting them and trying to convince them. So that's from me, Dinesh.
Okay, thank you. And Tanya, you can have the last word.
You're muted, Tanya.
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Hi. I think exactly what I want to say, Felix said it all. It is like, it's time that they started working on their talk. They have been talking so much for so many years before coming into power, and we believed in them, and we still believe it is possible. So we need action. And like I said, the import to export has the bridge between has got bigger and bigger, and where is the money going to come in? So if all organizations are being shut down little by little, how is the country going to go forward? So we need to look at the possibilities. This country is one country, I believe, can't be put down very easily. So the government needs to take that into as a benefit, that is a plus point for the government. So I think taking that into consideration, this government right now need to put their manifesto into action. They have promised so much, so high time they start delivery. They're good listeners, but when it comes to implementation, they're way slower than what we expected. With all those educated crowd out there, having 2/3 of majority in the parliament, what cannot be done? So if this is the time for the government to take action, and there are pros and cons, there are bad situations that has happened, but the good also can be taken into consideration if the policy making is being properly done.
Thank you.
So like I said with Phoenix, I totally agree. It's not the policy changes or the government change we are looking at. We need implementation of policy, what they promise, into action.
Thank you. So on that positive note, I'll turn it back to Arun to conclude the session. Thank you very much.
I think Susanta has a question.
Yes, actually, one small point I just want to leave with Dinesh. Actually, all in all, everybody was talking about the implementation and walk the talk. I think the one of the major things that lacking in our system is the planning and implementation. Those days we had a separate ministry for that, but at the moment we don't have it. It is not the finance ministry, but I think the government fund address all the things need to be taken into planning and implementation. That is very, very important, so that the policies can be implemented properly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over to you, Arun.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Susanta kind of sums it up very, very well. There is a framework that is perceived. A framework is there. The question now is implementation and optimizing on whatever that framework perceived is. and also providing the access to the people who need to move on. And we also had Dr. Vijayawardhanam stress a point much earlier on during his keynote, and that was to keep the public informed. We can't spring surprises on them. The people need to be brought into the whole scheme of things rather than be the other. They have to be part of the scheme of things. And that's why we close. And we want, again, to say thank you very much to all of our panelists and our keynote speakers. We have covered a lot of ground within the time that we've had for this particular program. I'd just like to emphasize the point that in the event there are viewers who have joined us later on, please know that this program will remain on the Facebook access page for those different platforms for a while longer. And if you feel there are others who might benefit from this particular discussion, this webinar, please let them know that they can pick it up and review it or look at it and perhaps offer their own ideas to those people, decision makers that matter. However, the substance of this will be made available to the authorities. We just want to mention that. Right, having said that, it's goodbye for now and thank you very, very much. There are some messages that we would like you to see.
If you seek for business, look for insightful. If you seek for politics, look for anticipation. If you value lifestyle, look for the extraordinary. If you love sports, look for the passion. Daily FT. Be empowered.